All right. Thank you, Lucas, so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So Lucas is one of our honorees for the Australian TOYP Awards. Congratulations, firstly.
Thank you.
I just wanted to have a quick chat about, who you are, and on behalf of Nic as well, who couldn't be here, about what Orange Sky is, what you do, and that might be a good place to start. So could you tell me a little bit about Orange Sky and how it works and what it does?
Absolutely. So Orange Sky was a really crazy idea just over 6 years ago between my best mate Nic and I, and what we wanted to do was improve the hygiene standards for people experiencing homelessness. So I had an old van, we got 2 washers, 2 dryers, chucked it in the back of a van and started driving around and washing and drying clothes for people who are doing it tough on the streets of Brisbane. And that simple idea of wanting to improve hygiene standards really quickly evolved into something much more. We realised even on the first shift that sitting down, having a chat was really where the impact of Orange Sky would have for people who are lonely, isolated, disconnected from the community. So a simple thing like conversation could really change both our volunteers and our homeless friends' lives for the better. So that really simple idea very quickly started to snowball, and more people started getting involved and get excited and get behind what we were doing. And to the point now we're lucky enough to have 33 services across Australia and New Zealand. We've got a couple of thousand volunteers operating, countless shifts every single week and supporting so many thousands of people, some of the 116,000 Aussies who find themselves homeless on any given night. So yeah, it's been a wild ride over the last 6 years. We've got plenty more work to do, and really passionate about washing, about showers, about conversation, and about bringing people together from all walks of life and having them connect and on a plastic orange chair.
Yeah, awesome, mate. So was homelessness an issue that the two of you were interested before this, or did it just kind of come about as part of like a spot shift somewhere?
Yeah, we, Nic and I were lucky enough to go to school here in Brisbane that actually runs a food van that goes out every morning and feeds people sleeping rough or not just sleeping rough, but anyone who's sort of in need in the Brisbane area. And I can remember being 15, and Nic had a very similar experience at 15, sort of heading out on this van, signing up and going, pretty bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to give it a crack, and went out the first morning and then just couldn't believe that there was such a big population of people that, a kilometre from where we went to school every day were sleeping rough or sleeping in crisis accommodation around that area. And that, I think, sparked an interest, a curiosity, a want to know and learn a little bit more, but also to see why is this such a challenge in a country like Australia, and why do we have such an issue with such a challenge with homelessness. So I think it's seeded in school, and those key things around it being really easy to volunteer, being simple, being tangible, being mobile. And then we finished school, sort of went into our own lives. I went to uni full time, Nic went into work full time. And after a couple of years of doing that, we sort of missed that opportunity to give back. So wanted to find a way to do it. Thought, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's try and do something a bit new and a bit different. And then, stumbled on this idea of washing and thought, I could maybe have a bit of an impact, and then kicked it off, and then the rest is history, as I say.
Yeah, cool. So was that something? So you guys obviously stayed in contact all through like high school and through university and through Nic's own work. Was that an idea that was gestating in the back the entire time, or how did you kind of come to the point where you're like, oh no, okay, so we're going to take this from an interest to we would actually like to start a business in this, and how did you get that started?
Yes, it's a good question. It's something that we spoke about, and I remember Nic had it drawn in one of his notebooks, and we talked about it sort of the year after school, and sort of, it's kind of cool, but nothing really happened. It just kind of was an idea that sat in a notebook. And then after a couple of years more passed, I went off on a bit of a gap year overseas, and did 8 months overseas, came back, didn't have a job lined up, uni hadn't started back yet. I sort of was floundering a little bit and really wanted to sink my teeth into something. And the second morning I was back, Nic and I caught up for breakfast, and we're best mates through school, so sort of stayed in contact through that whole process. And caught up, and he said, I've been thinking about this washing van idea again, and keen to kick it off. And I said, mate, let's crack on. I think I'm really keen to get into it and help in any way I can, and sort of hopefully add some value. So it's sort of seeded from that idea, and germinated for a bit, as you say. But then once it sort of came to fruition quite quickly.
Yeah, cool. I imagine that there's especially going from uni and overseas. And what was Nic doing before he went into this particular role?
So he worked as a sort of camera operator and editor at a TV station in Brisbane.
Okay, so quite different to running a washing service, like a mobile washing service. So like what sort of skills, what sort of background like prepared you for that? Like what sort of challenges did you kind of run into from a skills and operations kind of standpoint starting that up?
Yeah, it's been massive. I think where Nic's a lot of his skills around innovation and around bringing things to market and storytelling and stuff through that. Mine's probably more on the analytical and the financial and the numbers sort of side of the business. So probably have, like, I studied engineering at uni, so I had quite strong sort of science and data brain. I think where we started was purely with this like garage project and let's give it a crack and let's sort of see what happens. And as it's evolved, I suppose it's just been sort of iterating ourselves personally and collecting more and more skills along the way. So, you know, from, if that was when we first started, sort of a couple of months in, it's like, oh, well, let's build a volunteering model. We sort of built a bit of a volunteering model, and then that continues to evolve. And then from a technical perspective, like get the van to work. And then from a governance perspective, well, we need a board of directors. So we sort of, who wants to jump on the board, but then that evolved over time as well. So from a financial perspective, I did our first cash flow, I think, while I was studying accounting 101 at uni sort of thing, and kicked that off just as a bit of a how we level up. And I think we sort of plant these seeds, and then what we have on reflecting on the journey, I think being quite good at is saying, well, we can plant the seeds and we can start to give it nourishment and start to give it light and water and whatnot, but we're not the people potentially to grow it into a big tree. And I think acknowledging when we're starting to hit our sort of ceiling of capability or experience or expertise, and then either asking for external help, leaning on sort of board and mentors, or bringing in a specialist if that's in staff or a voluntary capacity as well to support with that journey as well. So, you know, we laugh now with our sort of our CFO and whatnot about our first set of cash flows that I did off, you know, after uni one day, sort of cracked in and gave it a crack, to now the point where, you know, it's a significant organisation. We've got a couple of thousand volunteers who we've got an obligation to make sure that they get home safely, that, you know, that our donors who give us money, that donors spent, you know, fiscally responsibly, and all these kind of things that we take really, really seriously. And I think the good thing of sort of learning and growing through that is we've been lucky enough to, like I said, plant that seed or do an aspect of everyone's job or role here within Orange Sky. So it gives us a good sense of what it was like, but then we can also have appreciation for how it can grow and evolve over that time as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely on the tools learning. We're really open to learn. We both love learning. We both really love that opportunity to help people and have a bit of fun along the way. So yeah, I think it's all wrapped up in there somehow.
Yeah, excellent. So with respect to like that, so that's how it kind of got started and came to fruition. So with respect to where you are now, not only from an operational standpoint, but from, I guess, a service and needs standpoint, like how have things changed? How are things different for Orange Sky from when you started, from what the idea originally was to what it's become?
Yeah, I touched on it in the first answer, but essentially the initial concept was around improving hygiene standards. And we thought, you know, washing's important. People don't have access to washing, something that's been overlooked pretty widely across the sector. And we think that we can do it in a van and bring it to people and add that value right then and there. And so that was the initial thought. But it was actually the first morning that we went out washing and successfully washing, I should say, and chatted to a guy by the name of Jordan, who went to school just up the road from me. He studied the same university degree as me at the same university that I was studying at. And all of a sudden I had my mind blown that Jordan was, you know, 8 years down the exact path that I was on, yet he was sleeping in a park. And then all of a sudden this conversation, and Jordan even talked about the positivity he could already sense that Orange Sky was bringing into the park. And so very quickly that angle really started to evolve to, obviously laundry is really critical to what we do. It's a magnet for drawing people together. It's a catalyst, but the impact actually happens as was initially an unexpected benefit. And those relationships that form for, you know, people who are ignored for 99% of the day, for people who, you know, don't have that human connection, who are so often told this is what's wrong with you, or this is what you need to do, or, you know, sign up to X religion or cause or whatever it might be, for a volunteer to come in be non-judgmental, sit down, check in, how you going, mate? Have a conversation, build a relationship. I think that's the core of what we know about homelessness, is that it's incredibly complex, and there's so many different reasons that people end up on the streets or in whatever living situation that they're in. So that care needs to be really tailored and personalized based on who the person is, and you can't do that without knowing someone or without having a conversation with someone. So yeah, it sort of very quickly evolved to being focused on that conversation element. In saying that, we've from an operational perspective, we've a couple of years in, we added showers. So I've got 10, 12 vans with showers on board, some with a laundry shower combination, and we do a bit of work in remote Indigenous communities. So have got with them still focused around laundry, conversations, education, but more around health and hygiene for things like scabies and trachoma in some remote Indigenous communities. That's a real struggle, and laundry can be a key lever in supporting that. From a volunteer perspective, it's about how we continue to level up our volunteers, train them better, equip them better for conversations, for different things they might encounter on an orange sky shift. So yeah, I think for us, what we're never comfortable with being where we are. We always want to see, how can we be better? How can we add more value? How can we build more trust? How can we support people?
Yeah, cool. So it sounds as though just to really quickly summarize, you've gone from, I guess, addressing a specific need or issue to, I guess, addressing an issue more holistically, and kind of trying to kind of engage your stakeholders in a way that addresses needs that go simply beyond, you need a wash, you need to have a conversation about X, Y, Z, and you're using laundry as a way to get there. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and a key part of that is actually the collaboration with other service providers. So every shift we operate, we're always in partnership with another organisation that might have a healthcare worker or a housing support worker, or just be, a person who cooks up a feed on a Thursday night. It can be anything in that spectrum. So that collaboration piece is something that isn't done as well as it could be done in a not-for-profit setting.
Yeah, cool. So is that something that or is that referral network rather something you've gone out and actively collaborated, or is that something you already came in there with, or you've kind of organically grown? Was there a process to building that?
Sort of a mix of all of them. I think our operational model, like, we can't operate without those other providers, in the sense of, we believe that, that collaboration is so important, and by us, the simple act of having a van turn up at a centre and plug in and utilize existing relationships and rapport and trust that exists in those different communities. Like, we couldn't, when we started in Melbourne, we didn't know any service providers in Melbourne. We didn't know any volunteers. We just sort of were two blokes from Brizzy who drove this van down and thought, let's give it a go. So then building that network of service providers, I think, and that knowledge across the whole space is really important, because, for our van in Brisbane, we go around the city in New Farm and Spring Hill, but then we go to Redcliffe, Beenleigh, Logan, Ipswich, and we can cover a serious amount of ground. So we're not just necessarily, it's not a bricks and mortar thing. We don't want it to be complacent in terms of location we can operate. We can be really responsive to that need as well. So, in the next couple of days, we're doing some community recovery shifts out in Ipswich for people who haven't had power since the big storms rolled through, and they're really calling out for simple things like laundry and some hygiene, like showers and whatnot services as well. So a simple thing like that, when we first started, you wouldn't picture these vans being used that way, can quickly evolve and support people in lots of different ways.
Sure. So you mentioned earlier with you had like specific needs that you needed to address around things like storms. And this year's been relatively difficult for Australia, specifically simply because of things like bushfires and floods and kind of the whole gamut of natural disasters and that sort of thing. Have you found that's changed the way that you've kind of delivered your service, or like the sorts of services you provide, or is it mostly a matter of scale, I guess?
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand. Like, we're lucky that we have the scale now to be able to respond and to be able to be agile to those needs, and that when we have a spare van sort of perpetually in circulation that subs in if a van gets crashed or something needs to be taken off the road for a number of weeks. So we're lucky that we have that flexibility to say, hey, yep, the bushfires have hit in Victoria, so let's send a van from Brisbane, or let's sort of bump vans down the east coast. Lucky to have that, I suppose, asset network, but then you plug in on top of that volunteers who are incredibly supportive and willing to jump in and support at the drop of a hat. I think what Australians are amazing at is really supporting people through natural disasters. So yeah, you sort of plug all those things in together. We were able to respond to the bushfires early this year. We've responded to cyclones and floods and other fires that.
For sure. With respect to, I guess, donations drives and, raising revenue and generating a bit of momentum for the business itself, I noticed on your website that you did have a few different like alternative methods, I suppose, for raising revenue in like a particularly innovative sort of way. Could you run me through those and how you've kind of, I guess, combated the economic difficulties that have kind of come about over the past few months?
Yeah, it's a massive challenge for every business, every not-for-profit, is how to, I suppose, keep the money coming in to support the work that you are doing, and that's everything from paying our staff to keeping fuel and tyres and vehicles and whatnot as well, who are all critical to the delivery of getting volunteers out and supporting people on the street. So yeah, I think our revenue rough split is through corporate partnerships, a lot of amazing corporate partnerships, philanthropic relationships, and that's through sort of family foundations, private ancillary funds, and high net wealth individuals. Then there's another chunk through grants, through different mechanisms, and then the last one, which you're alluding to, is around the everyday public. So people jump on the website, they can support a load of washing in a shower for $24. They can fundraise through doing a bake sale at the school, or wear orange to your work or your school. There's heaps of different methods from a community perspective that supports us so much, but also gives people a little method to start a conversation. And that's really what we talk about, is starting conversations. We just ran one of our big campaigns for the year called the Sudsy Challenge, which encourages people to wear the same clothes for 3 days, start as many conversations and raise funds for Orange Sky. So that we had 1,500 people do the challenge this year and raise over $330,000, which was an amazing result. Sort of in the midst of COVID and lots of uncertainty across there, and really what we're really open to is how we work with people, and what we're really passionate about is finding the fit. So for some people it is organising a bake sale. For some people it's selling socks and giving us 1% of the profits or 10% of revenue, or whatever it might be. For some people it's supporting a vehicle into a specific community with a significant donation, or for a corporate partner it might be how we work with them to collaborate and work with them on some of the challenges they're having from a business perspective, and that mutual benefit I think is really important as well. So yeah, it's a big pie, and there's lots of different inputs and outputs, but I think it's really important to consider them and treat, the same way that I treat someone who's given us $100,000, I'll treat someone who's given us $1, and I think that's really important to love and thank that community that makes Orange Sky happen every day.
Yeah, awesome. So with respect to, I guess, the future of Orange Sky, like, do you have anything on the horizon? Like, where are you guys going over the next few months? Like, what sort of things do you have planned? Anything that you'd like to plug on, I guess, a interview forum sort of situation?
Absolutely. So I suppose from a operational perspective, COVID's been a really challenging time for us, in that we went from 1,000 shifts a month in February to 0 for a short period of time. For about a week, we weren't operating a shift, and then we had to reimagine and reevaluate what running shifts in the sort of post-COVID world looks like. So had to put a lot of controls in place and different training things for our volunteers, and really bolster our systems to ensure that everyone who was wearing an Orange Sky shirt would be safe. So yeah, went through that process, and now we're on the ramp back up. So we're at about 600, or just operated 600 shifts last month. So sort of 60% of the way there, which has meant smaller volunteer teams and smaller impact than what we were doing sort of pre-COVID. But what we're really committed to is having that strong foundation to keep building. So we're likely to cross over that magic 1,000 number in the next couple of months, and that what that means is, I suppose, that every shift after that we're sort of forging ahead and in a post-COVID world. So really encourage anyone who's listening to jump on our website and become a volunteer. Help us, I suppose, reach those heights, but then far exceed them in the coming months and years. And what we want to do in the next 5 years is triple our current impact. And that's, through some asset growth into new areas, but predominantly through actually getting more value out of the assets. So that means more volunteers, more locations that we operate, more people that we're supporting. And that's a really big goal that we're pushing towards. And then the other one is heading into Christmas time. I think it's a time for families, time for connection, and also, but a really important acknowledgement is that there's lots of people out there who don't have that family and don't have that connection, and we'll continue pushing throughout Christmas time and really supporting people who are doing it tough and have access to a bit of connection, some washing, some normalcy, so that can people can jump in and support our holiday campaign through our website as well, orangesky.org.
Amazing. All right. Well, I have no further questions. So thank you so much, Lucas, for jumping on, and congratulations again on your TOYP honoration.
Thanks so much.
All right. Cheers, mate.